Would you believe me if I told you that every year, more than 600,000 people go missing in the United States alone?
What about if I told you that almost 90,000 are never found? Today we're taking a look at a few of the scariest and most mysterious disappearances that remain unsolved today. So sit back, relax, and try not to go anywhere.
First off, we have Angela Hammond. On April 4th, 1991, Angela Hammond vanished while talking to her boyfriend from a payphone. Her boyfriend, Rob Schaffer, said that Angela told him about a suspicious man circling the neighborhood in a green pickup truck. Now the driver then stopped near the payphone and Angela disappeared. Rob told the police that he quickly jumped into his car and drove to where Angela was, and as he was heading there, the green pickup drove past him. He slammed the car into reverse gear and blew its transmission, and he then helplessly watched as the abductor took his girlfriend away. A ransom note that was sent after the kidnapping said, "Hello, no redacted, we know you, you are no redacted, people like you deserve what you get. We know where your foxy daughter is and she will see us soon. Tell redacted she has our deepest sympathies in our further loss. Goodbye, redacted." Now police believe the suspect had actually been targeting the daughter of a local cop informant and not Angela. Now the informant received the letter on the same night Angela disappeared, and it seems to be an unfortunate case of mistaken identity, but nothing has ever been found about Angela.
Alright, next up we have the disappearance of Elizabeth Short, also known as the Black Dahlia, said to have been a patron of the infamous Cecil Hotel, known for the 17th mysterious deaths which occurred between the years 1924 and 2015. The Black Dahlia went missing on January 9th of 1947, and she was missing for 6 days total until her body was discovered on January 15th, just 5 miles away from the hotel. At the time of her death, Elizabeth was a waitress and struggling actor, and it had always been her dream to make headlines, but she was finding it pretty hard to get work in Hollywood, and so she had decided to take some much needed time off and visit an acquaintance in Los Angeles. Elizabeth Short did eventually make headlines, of course, and became nicknamed Black Dahlia after her body was found bisected, cut in half at the waist, and posed like a mannequin in a vacant lot in the Lemire Park area. There was no mess at the scene, and due to the clean nature of the cuts, police were led to believe that they had been made by a man with a steady hand with surgical precision. 9 days after the discovery of Short's body, an envelope containing many of her belongings was sent to the Los Angeles Examiner. The police had wanted to test the envelope and its contents for fingerprints, but quickly realized that all of the items had been cleaned with gasoline to remove any such evidence. On March 14th of 1924, a note was found in a pile of men's clothing confessing to the crime, but the man was never located, and the legitimacy of the confession was never proven. The case of the Black Dahlia has remained unsolved for the last 100 years.
Next up is the Fort Worth missing trio. Rachel Trickla went down to do some Christmas shopping on the morning of December 23rd, 1974 with her friend Lisa Renee Wilson and Julie Mosley. The girls were supposed to be home by 4 p.m., but they were never seen again. Rachel's car was then found parked outside of Sears, and witnesses said they saw the girls inside the shopping center. Locked inside the car were all the gifts the girls had bought, which made it unlikely that they ran away. Later, a letter was sent to Rachel's husband that read, "I know I'm going to catch it, but we just had to get away. We're going to Houston. See you in about a week. The car is in Sears upper lot. Love, Rachel." Now, besides the other errors in the letter, it looked as if Rachel had misspelt her own name on the first pass, and one of the numbers in the postmark was backwards. Now, despite receiving the letter, the girls' families did not believe that it was written by Rachel, nor that the girls had run away. Now, despite their efforts, no further information about the girls has ever been found.
Next up, we have the mysterious disappearance of D.B Cooper. On Wednesday, November 25th of 1971, a man going by the name of Daniel Cooper bought himself a one-way ticket from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington, and boarded the plane dressed in business attire, holding a briefcase and a brown paper bag. He sat down and prior to takeoff called the flight attendant over to order a drink. After the plane became airborne, he called that very same flight attendant back to his seat and handed her a note. She put it in her pocket, but Daniel urged her to read it, saying, "Miss, you better look at the note. I have an explosive device." He then instructed the woman to sit down next to him and opened his briefcase, revealing red sticks covered in a mass of wires, and asked her to deliver a message to the pilot. Daniel wanted $200,000 in $20 bills, 2 back parachutes, 2 front parachutes, and a fuel truck delivered to him by the time they landed. When the flight reached Seattle, Daniel held all passengers hostage until his demands were met. With certain members of the crew still on board, he demanded workers to refuel the plane and set a course for Mexico City. At around 8 p.m., during Daniel's second flight of the day, he leaped from the plane with 2 parachutes and a bag full of money. Despite the FBI's efforts and over 45 years of searching, Daniel's whereabouts remains unknown, and his case remains one of the greatest cold cases in FBI history.
Then we have Tara Calcio. On the morning of September 20th, 1988, Tara Calcio went out for a bike ride in Belen, New Mexico, and planned to meet her boyfriend for a tennis date at noon. When her mother didn't hear from her by the afternoon, she went looking for her daughter and started to worry when she found the tape Tara had been listening to in a ditch by the side of the highway. The police then found bits of Tara's Walkman and a bike at a campground 20 miles away from her home. Witnesses said they saw Tara on her bike and a truck suspiciously following her. That next summer, across the country in Port St. Joe, Florida, a woman who had been shopping found a Polaroid picture on the ground in the grocery store parking lot. In the picture were a teenage girl and a young boy tied up with tape over their mouths on top of a mattress in what appeared to be in the back of a van. Tara's mother was convinced that this girl was Tara due to the resemblance and the presence of a scar on the leg of the girl in the picture, similar to the one Tara also had. Now, there has never been any conclusive link between Tara and the picture, nor has the boy ever been identified. Tara has never been found, and there's no lead for what happened to her.
Next, we have the incredibly strange disappearance of a group of hikers who went missing in Dyatlov Pass while hiking in the mountains of current-day Russia. The incident took place in February of 1959 after 9 hikers disappeared in the mountains and later turned up dead on February 26 of the same year. After the group failed to return from their hike, authorities went out to canvass the area, and what they found was anything but ordinary and incredibly mysterious. The first strange discovery made was the hikers' abandoned tent, which appeared to have been ripped open from the inside. Footprints, sock prints, and shoe prints near the tent led the team to their next discovery. At the edge of the woods, the bodies of 2 men were discovered wearing nothing but their underwear. At first, it appeared the men had died from hypothermia, but upon closer examination of the bodies, along with the bodies of the 7 other men found during the months that followed, that theory was quickly disproved. One of the 9 bodies showed signs of blunt force trauma, another had 3rd-degree burns, one had thrown up vital fluids, and another was missing a tongue. Along with all of this, when tested, many of the men's clothing was found to be radioactive. While authorities have absolutely no idea what really happened in those mountains during 1959, there are theories. Perhaps the most perplexing would be a scientific phenomenon known as infrasound, in which winds interact with the land, causing a barely audible hum that vibrates at a frequency that causes feelings of nausea, panic, dread, chills, nervousness, and raised heart rate, and breathing difficulties. What do you guys think happened?
Moving on to Lars Mittank. Now, this is just a strange case. In July 2014, Lars Mittank was on summer break in Bulgaria. Partying on the beach, he got into a fist fight and sustained a ruptured eardrum. He was advised by his doctor to not fly until it healed, so he told his friends to go back to Germany without him. After spending the night in the hostel alone, though, he became extremely scared and paranoid. His mother received a panic text from him stating that he didn't feel safe, she should cancel his credit card, and that 4 mysterious men were following him. Now, the next day, he went to the airport and was seen on surveillance walking through the airport with his luggage. Suddenly, he then walks off screen and is then seen sprinting the other direction out of the airport without his bags, jumping over the fence, and disappearing into the forest. Now, he was never seen again. His family confirmed that he didn't suffer from any mental illness, and they have no idea why he would begin acting in such a bizarre and erratic manner. A massive search was launched to find Lars, but it was unsuccessful. So what happened to him? I guess we'll never know.
Next, we have the disappearance of Tom Young and Keith Reinhard. In 1987, Tom Young was renting a retail space in Silver Plume, Colorado. One day, he went for a walk with his dog Gus and never returned. The retail space was later rented to Keith Reinhard, who became encapsulated with the story of Young. So much so, in fact, that he began writing a novel in which the main character was a combination of himself and the missing man. Eventually, in 1988, Tom Young's body was found with a weapon by local hunters who had been patrolling the mountains nearby. Both Young and his dog had head injuries caused by a handheld weapon. Originally, it was speculated that Young had taken his own life, as it was revealed that the weapon next to him was one that he had purchased only a few days prior to his disappearance. But reports showed that the projectiles used did not match ones compatible with Young's weapon. Locals also maintained that Young loved his dog, and even if he had intended to end his own life, he would have never done anything to harm Gus. Upon hearing this news, Keith decided to go out and explore the area in which Young had been found, and he left for the mountains around 4:30 p.m. He was never seen again. Despite multiple multiple search and investigation efforts, neither Reinhard's body nor Young's killer were ever found. Was it a coincidence, or was there perhaps something far more sinister taking place in the mountains of Colorado?
Now we have Susan Powell. Susan Powell was last seen on December 6, 2009. At first, relatives reported the entire Powell family missing on December 7th, as Susan did not show up to work that day, and her purse, wallet, and identification were all found inside the house. Now later that day, her husband Joshua returned home with her 2 sons. He claimed he had left Susan sleeping at home shortly after midnight on December 7th and had taken his boys on a camping trip, which, let me just say, doesn't really make any sense. Now, upon searching the Powell residence on December 9th, investigators found traces of Susan's blood on the floor, and at the bank in which she worked, inside a safe deposit box that belonged to her, investigators discovered a handwritten will and testament. In the will, Susan had written about how bad her marriage became, and that Joshua had taken out a $1 million life insurance policy on her. If I die, her note said, it may not be an accident. Now, at the time of her disappearance, Susan's close friends said her marriage had been rocky for years, and that she had even seen a divorce lawyer. Now, Joshua was a suspect but was never charged with anything, and then in February 2012, Josh ended his own life along with his 2 sons in a house explosion during a supervised visit. Now, since then, Susan's case has run cold.
And finally, we have James Tetford, who disappeared in Bennington, Vermont in 1949 after a string of disappearances, including that of James's wife, who went to the market and never returned, took place in the area during the 1940s and 50s, leaving many natives to believe the area, dubbed the Vermont Triangle, to be cursed. Also among the missing was Maddie Rivers, an experienced hiking guide who disappeared in 1945 while leading a group of hunters into the mountain. Later, in 1946, a college student disappeared walking along the Long Trail. In 1950, the city saw the disappearance of young man Paul Jepson, and not long after, Frida Langer vanished in the mountains. While Frida's body was discovered a year later, the cause of death was never determined. The disappearance of James was no less perplexing than the rest, as on the day of his disappearance, James boarded a bus to Bennington with 14 other passengers who all remember seeing the man asleep in his seat. However, when the bus arrived at Bennington, after having made no stops along the way, James Tetford's luggage was still on board, but James himself was nowhere to be found.
Well, that's all for our list of the top 10 scary disappearances that remained unsolved today.
If you have any theories about these mysteries, feel free to let us know, and we'll be sure to take a look. As always, we've been your hosts, Hannah Thompson.
And I'm Emily Murray.
See ya!
Bye!